Hey folks, it's Alex Blencar and I'm back at the kitchen table. Today what I wanted to do was talk to you guys about a notice called an N12. The N12 is a notice provided by the Ontario Landlord and Tenant Board, and it is a notice to end a tenancy early for personal use. So this will be just a very basic video talking about when you would use the N12 and why you might need it. If you want to learn more about the N12, please feel free to reach out to me or a legal professional that can advise you directly on what the N12 is and how to use it properly. So this notice is commonly used when a landlord, purchaser, an immediate family member, or a caregiver wants to move into a tenanted property. It is also commonly used when a buyer purchases a tenanted property and they themselves want to move into that property, their immediate family member wants to move into that property, or a caregiver wants to move into that tenanted property. For example, if you purchased a property and you were going to move into the upstairs unit of the duplex and the downstairs unit of the duplex, a full-time nurse who was going to be assisting your elderly father in the upper unit moved into the downstairs unit, then you could effectively evict both tenants in that duplex. Now, an immediate family member is defined by the LTB as the purchaser's child, the purchaser's spouse, or the purchaser's parent. It is also defined as the purchaser's spouse's child or parent. Now, there is a catch. If a family member, a purchaser, or a caregiver is going to evict that tenant and move into that property, they do have to live in that property for at least 1 year. Now, when you serve this notice as a landlord, you are required to provide that tenant with an acceptable rental property or provide that tenant with 1 month's rent before the termination date. Now, that option is most commonly used, and best practice is to provide that sum of money on the termination date. Now, speaking of that termination date, you must provide at least 60 days notice in a typical month-to-month tenancy. This means that if your tenant pays rent on the first of every month, let's say you serve this notice on September 1st, the termination date for that tenancy would be October 31st, or 60 days after you served that notice. However, if the tenants are on a fixed term tenancy, you cannot serve this notice until the end of the tenancy. What does that mean? If they have signed the tenancy for a fixed term of 1 year, you cannot serve this notice until 60 days prior to the end of that year. This is why it's especially important to learn the type of tenancy if you are hoping to purchase a property with a tenant living in it. And then what you'll do is you'll have to adjust your closing date accordingly. So if it is a month-to-month tenancy and they need 60 days notice, you will have to move in on the 61st day or close if you want a vacant property 60 days after the notice has been served. Now, you cannot serve this notice with the intention to evict the tenant and then sell the property. You do have to have a signed copy of an agreement of purchase and sale on that property before you serve the notice. So how it works in the field: if you are buying a property that is tenanted, you will have the current sellers serve the notice to the tenants. Then you will adjust your closing date accordingly so that you can take vacant possession of that property. Now, it is best practice to have a clause in the agreement of purchase and sale that dictates that the purchaser will be moving into the subject property, will be staying there for at least a year, and who will be paying the termination date rent and who will be serving the notice of termination and on which date. Now, you do have to act in good faith as a landlord, or a tenant can file something called a T5 with the Landlord and Tenant Board. This is a termination of a tenancy in bad faith. This can cause the landlord and tenant to go to a hearing at the Landlord and Tenant Board if they evicted the tenant with bad intentions. This would likely happen if the purchaser did not move into the property for a year, but instead purchased that property to further renovate it and sell it for a profit, or got a new tenant in the property and charged them a higher market rent. Now, if an adjudicator determined that the landlord or purchaser acted with bad intentions in bad faith when serving this notice, there may be repercussions in a fine issued to that landlord or purchaser. So it is always best practice when using this form to follow your intentions. If you say you're going to be moving in, move into that property and stay there for at least a year. Now, obviously circumstances may change, but it is always best to just stick with your intentions and use this form with good faith. Alrighty guys, that's all for me. I hope you liked this video and I hope that shed some light on the N12. If you like this video, please subscribe or shoot me a like down below. It's greatly appreciated. And until next time guys, I'm Alex Blencarn. This is The Kitchen Table. Take care.